Hi, this is Jim Welsh from macrotides.com. Thanks for tuning in. Well, after World War II and prior to the financial crisis in 2008, central banks' most powerful policy tool was their policy rates. That, over the last 10 or 15 years, has really changed. Any doubt that central bank policy rates had lost their effectiveness was confirmed when the ECB and Bank of Japan launched massive quantitative easing programs after holding their policy rates to near zero, failed to ignite a solid economic recovery after the financial crisis. The ECB launched its first QE program in March of 2015, and the ECB's balance sheet is now 40% of European Union GDP. The Bank of Japan's balance sheet is almost 100% of Japan's GDP. But even though they did these massive quantitative easing programs, both the ECB and Bank of Japan found that they needed to go a step further. The ECB lowered its policy rate to a minus 0.1% in June 2014, and at the time said its negative policy rate would be temporary. Ironically, 5 years later, in September 2019, the ECB lowered its policy rate from 0.4% to minus 0.5%. So much for temporary. The Bank of Japan adopted a negative policy rate of minus 0.1% in January of 2016, where it remains. A healthy banking system is the foundation of a modern economy, but the negative interest rate policies of the ECB and Bank of Japan have eviscerated Japanese and European banks. Since the BOJ lowered its policy rate to 0.5% in 1996, the Topix Bank Index is down more than 75% and shows no signs of recovery. The ECB lowered its policy rate to 0.25% in December of 2011, 0% in 2012, before going negative at minus 0.1 in June of 2014. The Euro Stock Bank Index has persistently underperformed the Euro Stock Index since 2010, and especially during the ECB's low and negative policy rate regime since 2011. The decline in bank stocks in Japan and Europe make it very expensive for banks to fortify their balance sheets through the sale of equity. The inability to strengthen bank balance sheets will continue to curb banks' lending capacity, and this is likely to impair economic growth in coming years. With bond yields below zero in many countries, European banks simply can't make much money making loans, which is contributing to lackluster growth in the European Union. In comparison, the U.S. banking system is much healthier and stronger than banks in Japan and Europe, since the U.S. banks cleaned up and strengthened their balance sheets quickly after the financial crisis. Despite doing all the right things, though, U.S. bank stocks have significantly underperformed the S&P, in part due to a flat yield curve. The negative rates in the global bond market, primarily driven by the ECB and Bank of Japan's negative rate policy, have been holding U.S. rates below their natural level. So, the ECB and Bank of Japan's negative rate policy is distorting the U.S. yield curve. The takeaway from all this is that central banks no longer have the power to manipulate monetary policy to achieve the desired outcome. Central banks will not be able to count on policy rates to conduct monetary policy, as they have since World War II, to lift their economy out of recession and ignite a recovery. Instead, when we see the next recession, they will resort to huge quantitative easing programs when the next recession develops, which will be beneficial but not as powerful as significantly being able to cut their policy rates. Central bank monetary policy will be far less effective in coming years compared to the last 40 years, which will weigh on global economic growth for years to come. Thanks for tuning in. Hope something good happens for you today.